All right.
All
Welcome to
right.
Free Advice Friday. We are ready to go
Thank you.
live today. Looking forward to this one. We've got David Toback is going to be on the show today and answering all of your questions about rates because I know that there are a lot of people with a lot of questions about rates. So, just to give you a little bit of an idea about who David is, if you aren't already familiar, although I'm sure most of you are very well aware, David is, of course, a full time voice actor. He's the COO of the Global Voice Acting Academy, the GVAA. Also happens to be a photography lover and a video content creator, and he is the creator of the GVAA Rate Guide, which has turned into absolutely the most trusted, most respected rate guide I think that is available for our industry. And so David is going to be here to answer questions for you if you want to get connected with him. He is all over social media, doing a lot of really cool things on social media. You'll get a chance to see some of those photography skills and also to see some of those different videography skills that he offers as well. So there's some of his social media feeds if you want to get connected with David online. So let's bring David on and let's start answering some of your questions. Now, for those of you that want to ask questions, microphone's muted. There we go. Now we're working. Sorry, were we muted before? For those of you that are going to ask a question in the chat, if there's a question you want to get answered, can you please just put a capital Q beside your question? That way, it's easier for me to see it. It'll stand out from all of the other comments that will be going on in the chat. I apologize. I don't know why I was muted. I clicked the button. But anyway, if you missed the introduction, we've got David Toback from the GVAA Rate Guide. This is what happens when you do live streaming and you know, it's like live TV or live radio or mistakes happen. This is not live to tape. This is live to live. David, are you with
It
us?
is.
Can you?
I am. And it was a great intro. It was wonderful.
It
So
was, and now it seems like everybody missed it. I'll have to go back and like fix it in post or something so that we can make sure that everybody gets to find out. But looking
sure.
forward to spending some time with you today. I know you've been on the podcast before and answered questions there before as well, but there's never any shortage of questions that come up for voiceover rates. So let's dive
Sure.
right into the first one with that in mind. This is coming from Montague Voiceovers. With the increase in inflation, but seemingly downward rate trend afforded by the gig economy, do we think the GVAA rate guide will see any major or minor updates soon to reflect either or both of those? That's a really good question.
That is a very good question. Never. No. Well, it's a good question because that brings up, what do we, when do we update or how do we update those things? And there's a couple things to think about. I know we've seen the downward trend in rates because of the gig economy. I would say that they're different types of projects and different types of voiceover businesses or segments of the voiceover industry. A gig economy job, like shouldn't be probably the same rate, and it shouldn't be the same type of job. And if it is, then we shouldn't be doing them for gig economy rates. So I think it's a little bit of standing up for the rates and where those things are coming from. Um, you know, the gig economy is bringing rates down, but where are they bringing rates down? I'm getting jobs from my agent in Canada, and the rates look pretty good. So it depends, I think, where you're getting your jobs from. And if you're playing in more where the gig economy, the pay to play, in where those jobs are, which a lot of us are, you're going to see a lot of fluctuation. And so from the rate guide perspective, lowering rates because somebody's budget isn't where it should be is kind of hard to do. If it's like, hey, this is a 1 year commercial for Coors Light and it's going to be $1,500, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. Should we lower our rates because now all of a sudden someone else has determined what the value is? I mean, that's where the struggle is. I think understanding what maybe a professional rate should be and where things are and making a determination of, are you okay doing a job for that, or are you coming down? I think that's where it is. It's hard to just then lower rates, because now if we lower rates, now the value has been decreased. And what are we going through? Inflation.
Yep.
And so it's hard to just, we know what the rate guide is, Before it was just, you know, a guide and a helpful tool, and now it's kind of become kind of an industry standard. And so changing that comes with a lot of consequences for everybody. So we're very particular about that, and we have reviewed things before, and we probably will review things with some people as we're getting, you know, into this next year as well. We did one probably about a year ago. I don't know, all the days and months and weeks
It all
kind of
blurs
combined
together.
together now,
I
but we
haven't
did
paid
one.
attention to any of them since about 2019. I don't know.
Right. So I think there's you know, we did do one that was a big like digital broadcast update, and we did review commercial rates and updated them at that time. So I think it really needs to be like what type of job it is and where it's serving. There's so many jobs now that can really be just small and not really going really anywhere. And I would say if those things are happening where it's like, oh, you're doing, you know, I don't know, a local commercial for a business, you know, yeah, I'm going to take that into total different context than Coors Light for a national digital spot, you know. And so, and the big thing that we're also seeing is that, and this probably should have been the first thing, it just popped in my head, is that especially with agent auditions and things that do trickle into pay to play, we're seeing a lot more being added in for the same money. So before it was just TV, but now it's TV, radio, and digital,
Yeah.
and unlimited lifts, edits, and versions, and industrial, and corporate use, and everything, right? So even though the rates are kind of, and they're coming down even on added things, they're adding exclusivity into it now, which is ridiculous, you know, for the same amount of money, or just like a regular rate, like, oh, it's $3,500 for a year, but it's exclusivity. And you're like, that's what it probably should have been to begin with, let alone all these other things. So if we're giving more out in value, then the rate shouldn't come down, and that we have to be able to communicate that as well. Um, you know, so that's, I guess I'll leave that as the long, short answer.
The tricky thing about inflation, and I don't want to turn this into an episode of, you know, Jim Cramer on CNBC, but part of what's going on with inflation right now is they want to bring inflation down before it trickles into wages, because if inflation trickles into wages, then it actually continues to drive inflation higher, right? Because if wages have to go up, then the cost of goods or services provided by that company have to go up to accommodate the wage increase. And so right now, the whole thing is actually, let's get this squashed before we're in a position where we have to start charging more, because as soon as we have to start charging more, that just keeps inflation spiraling, which creates a whole other animal that, like I said, we don't want to turn this into CNBC, but you know, it
Yeah.
is a complicated issue. It's not just as simple as, oh, there's inflation, so we should put the rates up. Here's another question.
Yeah.
This one coming from Paul. It says, hey, Mark and David, how do you suggest formulating quotes for usage that doesn't fall neatly into one category? So a piece to be used on a website, a YouTube, an inner office, and as a handout. You line list
Cool.
those and write different usage for each one, or what is the trick to that?
Yeah, no, good question. Hey, Paul. So yeah, let me, I'm reading your piece. So website, I think it's important to, if it crosses different types of usage. So if it's broadcast and something else, then yeah, I would add those line items. You know, if it's something like going on the company website, on their YouTube, inner office, that's all going to be non-broadcast. So I think you kind of want to do, is it broadcast? Is it non-broadcast? And then if it's non-broadcast, it's probably going to be one area. It's e-learning, or it's corporate narration. Corporate narration, the usage for it kind of gets, you know, this internal smorgasbord for a company now that there's so much media and so many channels that they can put their own content. Before it was kind of their website, and now it's like their social media channels, their YouTube channel, they're going to put it on, you know, on TikTok, and that might, you know, it depends on how they're doing it. It kind of falls into a little bit of promotion. This is where things getting difficult now with digital. But I think you want to group it into what it is. If it's non-broadcast corporate narration, okay, these are the usages that come with that. It's not just one or the other. The same with, you know, if it's digital, it's digital. It doesn't matter what channel, what streaming service, or how it's getting put out. It's just getting put out. Same thing with TV. We're not like, hey, what networks are these going to be aired on? It's not like that. It's all about the time that they're using it for. And so that would kind of be, group it into the main categories that it is. And that way it's a little bit easier. You're not trying to configure things for every single little thing. And again, as a review, non-broadcast will definitely be pretty much anywhere they want to put it that's not put into paid placement. They get usage for that. So if they want to use it only on YouTube, it's the same rate. If they want to use it on YouTube, their socials, and their website, just as if someone does a TV commercial and they want to use it on one network compared to four, it's all the same. So that's how I would do that. And yeah, I would line item it. If they say, hey, we want TV, we want digital, and then we also want to use this in here, then yeah, line item that so they see what it is, so that if they come back, maybe it's a continuing client, they're going to know, hey, this is charged differently, not just putting it under one large umbrella where they just think, oh, we just get a voiceover for this. So kind of teaching the client through your quoting as well.
The line item thing I think works really well too, because it gives them the opportunity to add and or remove, right? So when they actually see, because sometimes they'll ask for everything without specifically needing everything. And so then when all of a sudden they see what the cost of everything is, they can say, actually, you know what, we just need this, and this, and then it makes it a little bit easier to break it down, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And bonus, I would say, if someone's like, oh, when this happens, because it will happen this week probably, oh, we don't know how long we're going to use it for. You're like, great, here's a 1 year rate. Yeah. Because you need to protect yourself. You give them the most, this is for 1 year. Oh, whoa. Well, we're only going to use it for like 6 weeks. Then all of a sudden they start to figure out how long they're using it for. Yeah. So make sure you protect yourself in those cases, and give them like the max, I guess, most general type of quote, which would protect you, and then be like, hey, if I can get the more detailed information, I can give you a more accurate quote that will reflect your needs better.
Yep.
And that does them a service, and it does you a service at the same time.
Absolutely. Again, if you guys have questions for David, anything that's voiceover related, rates related, or GVAA rate guide related, if you could just put a Q beside your question in the comment when you type it in, that'll make it a little bit easier for me to identify it from the chat. Here's another one from Montague Voiceovers. Thanks for the answer. It says, how did you come up with the fair market rates? I get this question from clients and want an answer from the guru. So where did the GVAA, I guess that's the origin story. Where did the GVAA rate guide come from?
We just kind of made it up. We're like, no.
I want to get this much money. So
let's see.
I need to buy this video gear. So in order to pay for this video gear.
Yeah, exactly. What kind of car do I want again? No. So basically, the origination of it was me just trying to get a price list for myself, because I found someone on Craigslist that wanted a voiceover. Yeah, that used to be a thing. I don't know if anyone's using Craigslist in their marketing strategy anymore, but I got a job and they're like, what do you charge? And I was like, I don't know, you're supposed to tell me. Like, I had an agent and I was on pay to play, so this whole thing of me understanding my rates, completely hadn't even thought about it, not one bit. So then it was like, help. Christina Malizia, who founded and is the owner of GVAA, she gave me some resources. I took some, maybe it was like the voices.com, the Edge, guide. I kind of just put something together for myself. So the next time someone asked, I wouldn't be like, oh no, what do I do? And of course I freaked out. It was like, oh crap, I have to respond immediately, otherwise they're not going to give me the job. And I wound up doing it for like $200, and it probably should have been, like 400 or 350, something like that. So not horrible, but so I was like, I don't want this. I must be the only schmuck that doesn't know how to quote their own voiceover stuff, So my analyst self went and put together a graph and found these rates, and Christina was like, oh, I showed it to her. She's like, we need this so badly in the industry. Like, would you work on this with me? So it was like, absolutely. So that's where the real stuff started happening. We got all the big players together in the room, agents, top voiceover professionals, coaches, people in the industry, to kind of see, like, what are you seeing with rates? Like, where should rates be? And this is mostly from the top tier agent level. The place where we all want to be in voiceover is where we went for the rates, because that's where, high professional standards should come from, is where the people that are doing all the work, the agents that are kind of booking that work. And so that's where we started from. And we've kind of kept that collective of people that we will, meet with and ask, like, hey, we're seeing this, or people ask us about things, there's new things. that people want to add to the rate guide, or, they say, hey, have you done this before? And hey, let's call everyone together and see what they think about that. Or we go out and find the subject matter expert, if it's, something that's not, TV, agent wise, e-learning. Well, we're going to go to the people that do a lot of e-learning work and things like that. So that's how the rates were established. And that's how we kind of maintain them still.
A lot of surveys, a lot of information, always trying to stay on top of what's going on with trends in the industry. Here's a good question that gets asked a lot. This one from Richard. It says, is it standard practice to present clients with a contract? So every job, are you presenting a contract of some form or fashion?
I won't say it's standard practice. It's a good idea. I think protecting yourself either way is really important, and either way being through a contract, which some people do for every single job, which is totally fine. And some people putting all those same details in your invoice and in your emails, or in your quote. So I think it's a good idea, especially with the way things are now with usage and AI and things like that. I think it is a good idea to have a template, a template contract that you can use. And here you go, here's my contract for the work, and send it over. But you can protect yourself as well with just putting it, in your emails, making sure that detail is there, and then putting that same info in your quote and or your invoice. If they pay your invoice, they've acknowledged your terms, and the terms are right there. The same with the email. If they say, you say, hey, here's all the terms, this is the rate, and they're like, great, sounds good. They've agreed to your terms via email as well. So added layers of protection is never a bad thing. And hopefully you just never have to utilize it. But having some form of protection I would absolutely recommend. Would not be throwing, things out there on assumptions and trust. Put the terms what it is and what it isn't. So this covers TV and radio broadcasts for 12 weeks, 13 weeks, in this market. Does not include internal blah, 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 and vice versa. This is corporate narration. It does not include any form of paid advertisement, TV. That way there's no questions about it. They've seen your terms. They've seen what the usage is. And if they violate that, you have good footing to then say, hey, look, you need to pay me.
That's I just put a link in the chat for anybody that wants to check it out. It's a sample letter of agreement that I've used kind of as a template in the past, and that's something that was posted on VoiceOver Extra. But I will say, and again, not a lawyer, not legal advice, but I have been able to use email communication in the past when there's been issues come up about usage and things getting used in a way they weren't supposed to. I've been able to go back to the emails and say, we clearly had this conversation. It was clearly outlined. But I think the word contract in and of itself freaks people out. And so I think if you just do that letter of agreement, which is just a one-page, super simple document that just outlines things, I think that makes it a lot easier, a lot less intimidating on the client side to receive too. Here's a good one. Do kids get the same rates as adults, professional kids and professional adults? Does the GVAA differentiate or distinguish one way or another?
The GVAA Rate Guide does not discriminate based on sex, religion, creed.
Time to put in the legal disclaimer. The lawyers gave me a piece of paper.
Yeah. Wait, there's more. Let me get that out. Yeah, no, the great thing about voiceover is if you're good enough to book the job, you're good enough to get the rate that comes along with that. So it doesn't matter that you're a child, that you're selling Coke. They're still getting the same money from, they're still getting the same benefit from whoever's voice is being used, regardless of their age, gender, ethnicity, any of that stuff. So rates should, absolutely should be the same. And actually they should be more, because there's not many kids that are doing voiceover, and there's not many that are that good at it either, that are good enough to do it.
It's only fair that the parents get their cut when the kids are doing the work.
Right, yeah.
You're driving them to the audition or to the studio, or you're arranging everything. You're acting as a manager or whatever. But no, it's a legitimate question, because I'm sure that there's probably instances where, because it's a kid, lower rates have been offered. But it's nice to know that there's not a separate kids version of the GVAA Rate Guide.
And some, the same fashion, there's not like, oh, well, I just started a year ago rate. There's not an experience level rate. That's up to you to determine, because you want to get clients. But if they're like, hey, we have this commercial and your voice is perfect for it, sounds like you're good for the job. It doesn't
Yep.
matter. You know, I know somebody, Gabe Kunda, who's a superstar in voiceover. You've heard him on any Disney Plus promo. You've heard movie trailers, the Wakanda trailer. He's a megastar, right? And I remember I, talked to him early on, like when he was just starting and he was doing lots of impressions and was like, hey, you got to get out into the real stuff. Like he was so talented. That dude, his first year, he made way more money than I've thought about making because he's a superstar, right? So it doesn't matter your experience; it matters how good you are,
Yep.
and if you're right for the job. Those are the qualifying factors, not our linear like, oh well, I need to have 3 to 5 years of experience to get that senior title. That doesn't fly in the creative arts. It's
Hey, look,
really about
college
what
is
the value is.
expensive and it's not getting any cheaper, right? So,
No.
yeah,
Yep.
kids have got to get paid. Here comes one from Jennifer. So she says, you guys have talked about this previously, but should we be limiting usage length on non-broadcast jobs in our agreements? Is the industry changing on this?
I would no. I mean, I think the issue there, it would be nice, but there's so much of it that unless it's controlled by an agent, are you going to manage every single non-broadcast job you've done and try
Right.
to get renewals on it? Um, the thing with originally, that was kind of the thought, like, oh, it's a year. That kind of went away where it's just going to live forever because they're not actively utilizing it for money making endeavors or sales like you would with TV, with ads and things like that, and promotions. So just like a video game, once you do the work, I mean, it doesn't matter how many games they sell, like you're getting paid the same hourly rate, right? It kind of falls into that same category. I think out of utility as well. What is the value that they're getting? This is where it's important to understand the type of non-broadcast job you're doing. So if you're doing something that's like kind of promotionally, I just made that up, but kind of promotion in nature,
Sure.
then charge more. There's a web video rate that we have, like 5 to 1,000. If you're doing something that's like, introducing the DeWalt power drill with 15 new attachments, and it goes on their website, it's kind of a commercial, but they're not putting paid media behind it.
Yes. Right.
So charge more for what that content is, not just because it's non-broadcast or not. So it's really kind of understanding what you're doing. Sometimes you're not going to understand. Hopefully, from the audition what type of script it is. Or you say, hey, what's the project? Oh, sure, send it over. Let me take a look and I'll give you a rate. And so now you look at it and you're like, okay, this is kind of going to be a promotional type of activity on their website or on their socials, which could have great reach. If you're doing something for DeWalt and they're putting it on their socials, it's going to have big reach. So, push the rate up, do what feels natural, because you know that what you're giving them, you're giving them more than just some internal, like, this is how you use, this is how we do this here at this company, and some brand video or something like that doesn't really drive anything promotional. So but as far as just that usage, like, yeah, I wouldn't say that the industry is changing on that. I mean, I think we're still going to be, for the sake and sanity of our lives, I think um charging the right rate for non-broadcast in perpetuity is where it needs to be. When you start getting like, oh, I'll do that for 150, well, then when it should have been 450 or 500, now you're starting to play where now this is a year because you're paying so little. So you can kind of gauge that how you will. I think that's up for everybody to kind of determine what they want to do for non-broadcast, because there aren't ramifications like conflicts. If
Right.
you do something in broadcast, you're setting yourself up for a potential conflict for other jobs, and so that has to be weighed out. With non-broadcast, you're not going to do that. So you kind of have more leeway to let that ride and then not have to track every single job. The amount of non-broadcast jobs that we have to do to have a good full-time career, unless you're just a magical commercial booking voice actor, and you book them every week, you have to do a lot. So you're going to be tracking all of these non-broadcast jobs, and should they be that? I think it becomes more of a hassle than a benefit in the end.
Yep. Again, we're doing Free Advice Friday. It's David Toback. He's the creator of the GVAA Rate Guide. If you've got a question for him regarding voiceover rates, feel free to type that question into the chat. If you could just put a capital Q beside it, it makes it a little easier to pop up in the chat window for me to see. I'm trying to get to as many questions as I can. You just touched on video games there a minute ago. Let's dive into this one from Zach. A lot of recent controversy regarding video game rates and the lack of royalties versus movies. What are your thoughts on a push to normalize royalties for gaming? Is that
Yes,
a conversation that
please.
GVAA is involved in at all?
No, that's gaming kind of really stems from the union, that those types of the rates, where it's per hour. We had the strike a few years ago now, I guess, and they kind of got some better protections, but people would want more. There weren't royalties in that when they struck and then had an agreement. So and the only people that would probably be able to manage royalties would be the union, because all those game studios would be signatories, and they would be agreeing to abide by those contracts that have been negotiated on. Um, I think it's very valid. Some sort of percentage. Yeah, you can make a decent amount if you're the lead in like Call of Duty or something like that, but then the game, makes billions, or makes the company billions of dollars, and
Yep.
some of these games are hundreds of millions, and you're the main character in it, and you got paid your 8 grand to do the sessions. I would love to see some sort of residuals or royalties. I think it could be bracketed, like total number, like blocks of sales, like
Right.
if it hits
Hit certain
between
milestones
these
or
margins, like, yeah, you
yeah.
get an extra X amount of payment. There was something in there, I think in the union there is some sort of additional bonus for certain structures, but it's not straight out royalty, and it's something we'd have to look into. But a lot of the games are going non-union, so that's even harder. And I think so many games are independent, and streaming games and stuff like that, and getting them to just pay, like, not pay per line is a chore. So if it does happen, it would be in the future in the union, but I honestly don't see it happening. It would be lovely, and I think it would be warranted, as well as the people that make the games. People like the developers get shafted too, because they sit there and hound. They work so hard to make the games, and then they make so much money, and that just goes straight to the company. So I think a little bit of valuing the people that make the work, in some sort of bonus capacity based on sales would be great. And it's not even that much. It wouldn't even be that much money. I mean, how many people are in a video game cast? I mean, there's not. I mean, if you're additional voices, you're not going to get that. It's going to be something like you're a major character. So I would love to see that. It's not something that we can really control. I think that's really going to be head by voice actors, striking or getting the union to kind of come off of that in renegotiations in the next contract.
I do think that voice actors play a role in that, and I think this is something that doesn't get touched on enough, and not just specifically in video games, but across the board in rates. We can complain about clients not paying enough or agent jobs rates getting lower and all of that sort of stuff, but as long as voice actors continue to accept lower rates and continue to work for lower rates, and we see a job get posted on a casting site for $100, and 1,000 voice actors go raging on Facebook about this $100 audition, but I guarantee you that half of those people that are raging also submitted for that project. And so, if you want to solve the problem, you also have to stop being part of the problem, which I think is, the other side of the
Yeah,
coin there. But it'll be
and it's
interesting
hard.
to see with the video game thing. Like you said, I think it sounds great in theory, but I just don't know. I don't know that it
Yeah.
works out that way in the end.
It's hard to be like, hey, give us more money. That's not really in the business model of any
Yep.
business.
Yep.
The business model is, and this is why we have so many cheap jobs that hit pay to play and casting sites, however they are, or just getting them from maybe a production company roster, because they're doing low rates. They want to maximize their bottom line. And if you don't really care about paying for the arts or paying reputable rates, your whole goal is to pay as little as possible. They're producing this production, and they're like, okay, let's see if we can get the cheapest guy here. Just like if you're having, like, you've done construction in your house, Mark, and I'm sure you weren't just like, first quote, yes, thank you. Like you're like, okay, I need these, I need, foundation guys, I need these, and maybe you're putting them together. You're not trusting one company. You're gonna see like, okay, well, oh, they're a little bit cheaper and great reviews. Okay, I'm gonna go with them. That's what companies are doing. They're like, how can we maximize our budget here so we make as much money? And if they want good, but there's good enough, and sometimes that where the rate falls is where we need to be the arbiters of, I'm not that type of voice actor. I don't do jobs for that low because I value myself, so I'm not going to do that. And I've had to do that my whole career because I created the rate guide very early on, and I have to live by what I preach, right? So
Yep.
taking low rate jobs just because they're available is something that we have to be comfortable with saying no. And it sucks because we need to remove the validation from making the money from the job, and so that way it's like, hey, it doesn't matter. It's not up to my standards. It's not someone I want to work with because they don't value me as a person. It's kind of like being in that relationship where the person doesn't like you or love you, but you're afraid to leave. So we can't let that happen with our clients.
I think the other thing that's going to be interesting in the video game side in particular is we're starting to see consolidation in the industry, right? Where gaming companies are starting to buy out other gaming companies. And so as you get into a situation where you've got mergers, you've got less competition. Once you've got less competition, that's generally
Mm-hmm.
one of the things that leads to erosion in rates. And so I think maybe some of this consolidation means rates are probably going to get a little bit lower before they're going to get a little bit higher. Here's an interesting question. Guerrera says, my background is in broadcasting. How do I leverage a decade of broadcast TV experience into my voiceover rates? Is that where ranges in the rate guide come into play? Based on your experience level, there's the lower end, higher end rate ranges in the guide, or does it matter?
I I honestly, I don't think TV broadcasting has any relevance, honestly. No offense. I don't think it makes you a better voice actor because you were in TV broadcasting. If anything, you have to work harder to get that broadcasting sound, just like the radio sound that people,
Radio did
there's,
not do anything for me in my career. I can
right.
honestly tell you, it made it a lot
Yeah.
harder, is what it did.
Yeah. And there's people like, I know, there's someone in the GVA membership, Susan Knight, who still does radio, and she's worked so incredibly hard to move around it and then still be able to do it and not have it be a part of VO, and she's doing great. So it's difficult, and so I would say that one doesn't beget the other. People like, oh, people have told me before, like, ever think about getting in radio? And I just like, I just chuckle, because they just don't know. But no, I've never thought about getting in radio. And they're like, oh, you're a voice actor, you'd be great on radio. And it's like, maybe
Well,
not.
I like to make money.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's like, that's kind of where, that I think it's just, we're on an even playing field. Someone asked about kids earlier. It's kind of the same thing. Your experience outside of things doesn't really matter. If you want to say, hey, I have all this experience, I've been a professional for all these years, I'm going to charge at, good to high rates according to the rate guide or whatever your thing is. Go for it. If you can get it, then it's yours. So that's what I would say.
Okay, here's one. Does the GVAA rate charge or change or differences apply if you're doing work with city, county, or government entities? So, in other words, government rates, do they get to be higher? And then the second question there about if purchases for your business can be written off on your taxes. I will take that second part. Generally speaking, yes. Anything that you're purchasing for your business can be written off on your taxes. Always consult with your accountant, but equipment,
Yes.
software, services, stuff for your studio, all of the, even coaching demos and things like that often can get written off on your taxes.
Training.
So,
oh,
all of that
absolutely.
stuff.
Conferences.
Yep.
Travel to and from conferences. Meals and entertainment while you're in the service of doing business. So, and actually, you can, in the States, you can definitely write off buying video games, Netflix subscriptions. People do it because they're watching content that they can be doing.
It's research purposes.
It's a research, exactly.
I don't know if I could justify that when I'm binge watching the latest season of Somebody Feed Phil, but
right. It's like, I got Apple TV for this one thing,
yeah.
But now I can, So there's a lot of those things. I would absolutely, it's best to consult somebody that can kind of guide you. it's good to have an accounting system. Like I know Mark and I use Wave apps, and you can put in not line items, but cost accounts essentially for your expenses and your income, and it'll help you to be able to understand what those things, whether they fall into a category that you can write off or what percentage you can. So that's important to kind of dig into. um, the first question was different prices for city, state, and
Yeah.
government.
Yep.
Heck no.
I wish, but
Yeah. Definitely not. I mean, they're a client regardless. The same with nonprofits. This bugs me because nonprofits, they can't make a profit. That's why they're a nonprofit. So all of their money goes to marketing and employee salaries and other ancillary things that support the business. So they have to get rid of that money every year. And the biggest budget outs, I mean, probably bigger than their payroll is marketing. That's
yep.
all they do. They market their charity to get donations.
To get more money. Yep.
So they have money to market. They just use the nonprofit as a way because they're cheap. They pay people cheap that work there. I know because I worked with the American Cancer Society for years as a volunteer.
Yep.
That's how I almost cut my leg off. That's a whole other story. But and the people that did that work got paid nothing. It was,
Yep.
and that's what they do. But guess what? Those CEOs, they be making money. So there's room there. So I say, hey, if you need the job now, it's not to say it's like, hey, you're the government, I'm charging the highest possible. No, like you want to get a client, like you give them a fair rate. If they say, hey, our budget's this, okay, well, I can't do for that, here's what I can do, and you come down a little bit. But just because they're the government or a nonprofit doesn't mean that they automatically get a lower rate. I mean, the government usually way overpays for things because they have to get rid of their money. Otherwise, they don't get that same budget the next year.
Yep.
So,
yep. All right, let's save one more question for David, and then I will be sticking around to answer some of your regular general business and marketing questions. So here is one final one for you, David. Quick. Some VO sites mention rates, a contact me alternate. So some mention a rate guide, some give numbers. I guess the bottom line is I go to a voice actor's website, I click a button, and it says contact me for rates. Aren't buyers not like other consumers who just want to know numbers? Why don't we just post numbers all over our websites, I guess is probably the question there. Why don't we just all have a rate guide listed on our website?
I think that's the common thinking. It's like, oh yeah, here's my price list. The problem with that is that it can do the wrong thing. We understand, hey, here are our rates, and there's lots of exceptions that could happen. The client sees that and they're like, oh great, this is the rate. Now what happens if they have something different, or but your rates are on your site, it says right there.
Yep.
Yeah, but that's for this, and now you have to go through this education of what the rate should or shouldn't be. And so I think if we put the rates up, it kind of can lock us in. Now maybe where it can be used well is like e-learning or something like that, where it's really based on the number of words, and maybe you can do that, or you would be safer from that. But again, what if you say, hey, my rate is 25 cents a word, and then someone comes and they have highly technical link, it's like medical e-learning. Yep. Now you need to charge like 40 cents a word, and they're like, but you say 25 cents right there. So having a price list, kind of can box us into those rates, and we all know how complicated, complex, and different each job can be. It's not, again, that's the factor of a linear world that we live in, where everything is like mathematically figure outable. And that's why people are like, oh, how much per minute? They want a standard because they want, well, how much do you charge? Like they'll say, like, how much do you charge for voiceovers? And you're like, oh, you don't even know what you're doing because you're so ignorant to it. Like you don't even understand that's not how this works, So I think that can get us in more trouble than it helps.
We're not selling widgets, so there's not a fixed price list. It's just like a plumber. You can't just call a plumber and be like, hey, how much to install a toilet? Well, is it a brand new build and there's no toilet there, but all the plumbing is in and I just need to sit the toilet in place? Or is it a 200-year-old home where I'm going to have to come in and remove an old toilet and possibly change out plumbing and put a new toilet in? So you can't just ask the question, how much to replace a toilet? I think it works the same way in voiceover, is that there's right. Too many variables that come into play where I think it just makes it easier to be able to quote on a case-by-case basis.
Yeah.
For those of you that want to get in touch with David, by the way, here's his social media profiles: YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter. He's everywhere. He's creating tons of great content. I know he offers some coaching as well through the GVAA. And if you want to book for rate consultations and things of that nature to learn more, you can certainly do that. So there's the websites, the socials, write all of those down. David, this has been awesome. The rate guide, of
Thanks.
course, I think everybody knows where the rate guide's at, but the GVAARateGuide.com is the website, and it is definitely a tool that every voice actor should learn how to use and have the ability to use, so that we can do our part on the talent side to make sure that we're keeping rates as fair as possible. So David, thank you so much
Yeah.
for coming and hanging out with us for a little bit.
Sure. I can't believe it's already time. I'm just getting fired up.
It goes so fast. Well, I'll tell you what, we will
It does.
definitely do this again and
Yeah.
have an opportunity to answer some more questions. Of course, there is a podcast episode that I did with David where he answers a lot of questions as well. So you can go back and check that one out at VOpreneur.com. But David,
Yep.
thanks for giving up a little bit of time on your Friday afternoon and hanging out with us. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks. I'm on the West Coast. It was a great start to my morning. I
There you go.
appreciate it. I'm fired up for a great Friday. So
Now you're just in time to
keep
go and grab some lunch or something.
yeah, I have a meeting in 20 minutes, but after that for sure. But thanks everyone, and yeah, keep up the good work out there, and we appreciate the support. And have a great weekend, everyone.
Right.
Thanks for having me, Mark. Take care.
Thanks, David.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right. That was great. David, hanging around. Thank you for that. Now, I'm not done yet. If you've got questions that you want to ask, this is your opportunity to get some of your general voiceover business and marketing questions answered. I'm happy to do that for you. Just before I start answering some of your questions, I got to take a moment to give a shout out to 100 Voices Who Care. It's a really, really cool organization. It's basically a bunch of voice actors getting together and supporting important charitable causes as a group, as a whole. So check them out, 100voiceswhocare.org. That is the website. I'd love it if you would look that up and maybe consider signing up to be a part of 100 Voices Who Care. I wanted to give a shout out to them. Great organization. All right, so what do you guys want to talk about? What other questions can I answer for you? Let me scroll through. By the way, if you do have a question that you want to ask and get answered, can you please just, if you put a Q beside it when you type it into the comments, it makes it easier for me to see it on my screen. So I'm going to scroll through and see. Let's see. Nonprofits have budgets, government too. Absolutely. That is true. Shauna says, I want to thank David and the GVAA Rate Guide. So helpful. Absolutely. Kay says, as a freelance VO, I also want to thank David and the GVAA Rate Guide. It's being updated all the time. It is an incredible resource as the industry changes and evolves. The Rate Guide has done a really good job of changing and evolving along with it as well. Julie says, thanks, David. Jolene, great points made today. Veronica says, thank you, David. Guerrera says, yikes, he was harsh. You know what? I think it's just, Guerrera, as somebody who came from a radio background with decades of experience in radio, I was a program director. I was a successful on-air announcer. I worked in television. I did all of these things that I thought were going to contribute to my voiceover career. And ultimately, they just didn't. They made certain aspects of my voiceover career significantly harder. And I think that's the thing, is that the two industries they're adjacent to each other, but they're not directly tied together. And so it just doesn't come into play the same way. I mean, if you were celebrity broadcast, like if I'm Howard Stern, which obviously I'm not, but if I was, could I charge more money for my voiceover? Probably, but unfortunately, not Howard Stern. All right, behind the audition with Kurt Hilton. When updating your demo, do you write your own copy or do you reach out to a coach demo company to create one for you? So this is an interesting question. Generally speaking, when you're getting a professional demo produced, assuming that you're going to work with a producer to do that demo for you, that producer is going to write the copy for you. That is generally part of the service that they offer. So when I reach out, when J. Michael did my explainer demo, he provided me with the spots. And, I record. When Ann Ganguza did my e-learning demo, same thing. She provided me with the spots, and then we sit down together and we record. When Uncle Roy did my commercial demo, he provided me with spots. When Tom Pinto did my documentary and narration demo, he provided me with spots. So generally speaking, getting provided with spots is part of what will happen at the time that you go to get the demo produced. That being said, can you write your own? I guess if you've got the ability to do it, there's no reason why you couldn't write your own. So that would certainly be an option. Again, if you've got a question that you'd like to ask for Free Advice Friday, any general business and marketing related questions, feel free to type those into the comments. I'm keeping an eye out for those. I want to quickly mention too, this Tuesday, I'm going to be teaching a brand new webinar. It's called 10 Marketing Commandments for the VOpreneur. I'm really excited about this one. I've been working hard on putting together all of the content for it and looking forward to teach it. If you have just no idea where to start with your marketing, if you're like really just at the beginning, or you're just frustrated, overwhelmed, confused by the whole concept of marketing, I've created this webinar to really be kind of an introductory webinar to give you some foundational tools for your marketing. And at $47, it's also the most accessible webinar that I've ever offered. So that's going to be happening live on November 15th at 7 o'clock Eastern. It's going to be live via Zoom. If you can't attend live, don't worry. Everybody who signs up will get access to a video recording. But you can sign up for that one at marcscottcoaching.com. The website, marcscottcoaching.com. If you want to sign up for 10 Marketing Commandments for the VOpreneur. Out there question. I've never had to use Source Connect, mostly doing Zoom. Any advice on whether to purchase the buyout license or the subscription? This is a great question and a heavily debated question. And I think that there's the one main difference between the two. When you buy out the Source Connect package, when you pay your $300 or $350 or whatever it is to buy it out. When you buy it out, you only get access to updates for a certain period of time. And then you're ultimately going to have to pay to continue to get access to updates or to the latest version of the software. Whereas when you are on the subscription basis, you're always going to have the most current, always have the most recent update available to you. So there's that side of it to consider. I mean, for me, ultimately, I pay month to month. Maybe that's not the best way to go, but it does give me a consistent write-off for tax purposes, which is something else that I'm always taking into consideration. But my understanding is that is the primary difference between the two is if you buy out once, you only get access to updates for a certain period of time, and then you're still going to end up having to pay more or pay a re-up fee or something like that if you want to get access to the newest version of the software when it comes out. All right, let's see. Here's a question for international voice buyers. Is it better to get an international agent or trying reaching out to these companies directly, these buyers directly? So I do work with a number of international clients for my voiceover business, and I do work with all of them directly, and I negotiate the rates myself. The biggest thing you have to take into consideration when you're working in the international market is that the rates do vary from country to country. The GVAA Rate Guide, as amazing as that rate guide is a North American-based race guide. It is a US-based rate guide. That GVAA Rate Guide doesn't even really apply specifically in Canada. It is very much a US-based rate guide, so you have to take that into consideration. That being said, can you get international agents? Absolutely, you can get international agents. There are a lot of voice actors who do have international agents, and so it's certainly an option. I think you could probably find something that is, somewhere in between some of the jobs that you're going to quote on your own and get on your own, and some of those jobs that you are going to be able to book potentially through an international agent. So it's certainly another option. All right, let's see what else is going on. Troy says, I know Chuck Duran does a very deep dive into you to get the best scripts for you on your demo. Yep, absolutely. And Ganguza does the same. Jay Michael does the same. I worked very closely with Tom Pinto trying to pick what we thought were the absolute right scripts for me based on the type of documentary that I was interested in doing, based on the different vocal styles that I had to offer in that genre. And so that is something that when you're working with a really good coach or demo producer, that should be part of the service that they offer to be able to make sure that you're getting the best possible demo. So again, welcome to Free Advice Friday, everyone. If you have questions that you would like to ask and get answered, I am absolutely open to answering questions for you. Type them into the comments. Just put a big Q. When you type those questions into the comments, put that big Q so it helps it to stand out in the chat. Certainly willing to answer any questions on the business and marketing side of voiceover, so feel free to type away. What do you want to talk about? What can I help you with? What is going on? Let's see, what else? I want to remind you about this if you haven't done it yet. Check out my new free download. If you need ideas or inspiration for Instagram or TikTok, and guys, I absolutely think that video should be part of what you are doing in your marketing because video is so huge right now. But if you're stuck for ideas, I've created a handy little resource that I think will give you ideas. markscottcoaching.com/20 video ideas is the website. markscottcoaching.com/20 video ideas. That is an absolutely free download that you can get, which is definitely going to help you and inspire you and give you some ideas for what you could potentially be doing with your videos on Instagram and TikTok. So check that one out. All right. What else? What can I help you with? What questions do you have? What questions can I answer for you? I've got some good stuff coming up on Free Advice Friday here in the next few weeks. So make sure that you are watching out for that. Let's see what's coming up next week. It's going to be Tracy Lindley joining me on the show. Tracy's going to be sticking around for half an hour or so and answering all of your questions about LinkedIn. So that's going to be a really good one. Looking forward to that. Tracy, of course, is a LinkedIn master and definitely going to be able to ask and get some great questions and get some good answers on that one. And then following Tracy, one half of the V123 pros, Natasha Marchevska, is going to be on Free Advice Friday, November 25th, answering all of your questions about Voice 123. So do me a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel. If you are subscribed to the channel, you'll be able to get notified whenever I go live. They're already posted actually. So if you head over to my YouTube channel right now, you have the ability to click a little button that will notify you that of when I'm going live. But those are the next two that are coming up. Is going to be with Tracy Lindley on LinkedIn and Natasha Marchevska on Voice 123 Pros. And can I let you in a little secret? Let me let you in a little secret because you guys are hanging out and you're watching, and I appreciate that you're hanging out and watching. There is a rumor going around that when Natasha is on Free Advice Friday on November 25th, there may or may not be a special offer being made to anybody who is watching the show who may be interested in picking up the course that the V123 Pros offer. That's all I'm going to say for now. Plant that little seed there. So make sure that you join me. That one's coming up November 25th. All right. Bobby Kyle says, any networking tips for someone attending VO Atlanta for the first time? I think it's great to get connected with other people in the community, and I think that VO Atlanta is absolutely going to give you opportunities to create with other people who are in the community. So there's that side of things. I do think that there's a really good opportunity to meet and connect and network with movers and shakers in the industry as far as agents, casting directors, demo producers, things of that nature. The one thing I would say, though, is be respectful. Walking up to an agent at VO Atlanta and trying to shove your demo in their face is not going to go down well. But attending their session, learning some things from them, showing appreciation for information that they have shared with you or something like that, that you can absolutely do and start to get yourself on the radar and start to build your, build a relationship with them in that way. But I would just definitely be cautious of don't get too over eager. That is not what VO Atlanta is for. That's not the way that it's supposed to work. But meet some people in the industry, have some fun, obviously attend sessions, make sure that you're getting the learning side in, but hang around in the hallways, sit with somebody different at lunch and stuff like that. I think there's an opportunity to do all of those things too. Just remember that you are primarily connecting with other voice actors at VO Atlanta. And these are not specifically the people that are going to hire you, although they can be people that can certainly have an influence in your career from a mentorship and teaching and education perspective as well. What's recommended best practice when a client sends you a finished script with typos, or if it doesn't seem like it's written in proper English? This is a really tricky one because this happens a lot. I find this happens a lot, particularly in e-learning. I am not a proofreader and I am not a copywriter, and those are not services that I am offering to my client. That said, I also don't want to record a voiceover and then have to go back and re-record the voiceover all over again because I just recorded the script as it was provided. And so with most of my clients, if I see something really obvious and glaring, I will point it out to them and just say, do you want to have a chance to fix this before I record? And generally they will, and generally it's appreciated. Now, with some of my clients that I've been working with a little bit longer, I just know. I know when I see something that, okay, this is clearly a mistake, and so I will fix it on the spot for them. And so that is certainly another option. But again, that's with clients that I'm more familiar with, clients that I have a closer relationship with. But I would certainly say don't be afraid to ask. I would certainly much rather ask than have to go back and record the whole thing all over again. I definitely don't want to have to go back and record the whole thing over again. So that's kind of how I handle it, generally speaking, is just to point it out and say, hey, I noticed this, and would you like to have an opportunity to fix this before I record, or is this something that you want to take a look at before I record? That's generally what I'm doing. Guys, if you haven't had a chance to check out the new episode of the podcast yet, this one came out on Thursday. Keep your emails out of spam. Brad Newman offers a ton of great advice in this one. At times, it gets a little bit technical, but I think that Brad did a fantastic job of explaining it for the layman as much as humanly possible. And it's a really important subject. If you are worried at all that you are writing marketing emails and you're not seeing the responses that you want to see, or you're not seeing the open rates that you want to see, it could be that your emails are landing in spam, and there might be some simple things that you can do to fix that. I will also tell you that Brad created a tool, a free tool for voice actors to check their emails to determine whether or not there are any strikes against their email. And he talks all about that tool in the podcast. So you are definitely going to want to check out that episode for that reason as well. So that's the new episode that is available at VOpreneur.com, or of course, wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. All right. Again, if you've got questions, don't be shy. I'm happy to answer questions for you. Anything on the business and marketing side of voiceover, feel free to type that into the comments. Again, if you've got a question that you would like to ask, could you put a Q beside that so that it stands out to me in the chat? It makes it easier for me to find it as I'm scrolling through. Let's see, what else is going on? Okay, here's a new question. Let's pop this one up. Edwin says, what if you're a brand new VO with no business officially set up? You are freelancing. Can you still qualify to write off your VO gear? Okay, so we did touch on that. David and I did touch on that. Yes, anything that you purchase, you are able to write off. You do not have to be an LLC or incorporated in order to be able to do that. Now, again, always double check with your accountant. Rules can vary from state to state, country to country, province to province, et cetera, et cetera. So always have that conversation with your accountant, but you should be able to write off anything that you are purchasing to get started with your voiceover business. And that includes your demos, your coaching, your training, your education, your equipment. I'm even able to write off a percentage of my electricity bill, a percentage of my heating bill, a percentage of my water bill, all of those sorts of things, because I'm operating an office from my home studio or whatever. And so there are things that you can absolutely write off. So I would certainly have that question with your accountant. And by the way, if you're not working with an accountant, a good accountant will pay for themselves many times over in the amount of money that they can ultimately save you on your taxes. But they'll be able to tell you everything that is eligible to be written off based on where you live and what the tax law and tax code is where you live. What else can I answer for you guys today on Free Advice Friday? If you've got a question, feel free to type it into the comments, and I am certainly happy to answer that question for you. Marie says that episode was fabulous. Tons of info. That's the episode with Brad Newman on how to keep your email out of spam. Even though certain aspects of the episode got a little bit technical, there's also some very basic things that we can all be doing to help ensure that our emails stay out of spam. Stuff that can be fixed just in content, in the way we were typing our subject lines, in the email signatures that we're using, and all of that sort of stuff as well. So lots of really good advice given in that episode for sure. Happy Veterans Day to all of you from the States here, and rest in peace, Kevin Conroy, aka Batman. And yes, it is Veterans Day in the States. It is Remembrance Day here in Canada. Mark, your secret crush has arrived. I was watching. I was on it this time. I saw those things start popping up in the chat very early this time. I feel like now every time I go live on YouTube, somebody's got to get in there and start typing stupid comments. The bots have found me. That's okay. I got them banned. I got rid of them. All right. What do you guys want to talk about? What questions can I answer for you for Free Advice Friday? What else is going on? Thank you guys for watching, as always. Thank you for joining, as always. Thank you for your questions, as always. I certainly do my best to get through and answer every question. Let me just scroll back through and see if I missed anything. If I did miss your question, feel free to throw it up in the chat again. I apologize if I did miss it. Earlier, there were a lot of questions coming in a hurry, and I was doing my best to keep up with everything. Let's see. Just scrolling through to see if I've missed anything. Hopefully I haven't. If you've got a question that you would like to ask, voiceover, business, and marketing related, what time is it? It's 2 o'clock. I got time to answer one or two more questions if somebody's got one. Penelope says, Mark, do you use a mail merger or do you send out one email at a time? So generally speaking, when I'm doing my marketing emails, I'm sending one email at a time. When I'm using my CRM system, I do have the ability within my CRM system to send group messages. And so occasionally I will send group messages, although I usually try to limit those to about 25 at a time. That way it doesn't look like there's too many emails going out all at once, particularly when the emails are going out with identical subject line and mostly identical content and whatnot. I do use, for marketing on the coaching side, I do use Drip as my email marketing software, which does allow me to send bulk messages to everybody. So I do use that, but that's on the coaching side, not specifically on the voiceover side. Generally speaking, on the voiceover side, I'm trying to do things a little bit more individualized and a little bit more personalized. Jolene says, what are your thoughts on those situations where buyers are attempting to get a lower rate from you with the promise of consistent work, do's and don'ts? Generally speaking, in my experience, when a client is trying to get consistent work from you, or they're promising consistent work for lower rates, there's a couple of things that I think are pretty standard. One, you almost never end up getting consistent work. That usually ends up just being a line. Not all the time, but most of the time. So that's the one thing that I would say. The other thing that I would say is that the kind of client that you want to work for? The kind of client that I want to work for is not the kind of client who is going to constantly be trying to devalue me and devalue my service. And so I don't want to work with people who are going to be a constant hassle. In fact, I have fired clients in the past because we've set a rate schedule, we've agreed to a rate schedule, and sometimes that rate schedule was slightly lower than my regular rate because of a contract agreement for a bulk amount of work. And then every time they sent me a script, they still tried to negotiate an even lower rate, even though we had already had that conversation. And I just don't want to have I don't want to have that argument every single time. I don't want to have the debate every single time. And so in those instances, generally speaking, that's not the kind of person that I want to work with. So I would say in those situations, I would stick to your guns. If they are a great client and they really genuinely want to work with you, as long as you're not too far apart, right? I mean, I would say stick to your guns. I just have not had a lot of good experience in the past, on my own side of things anyway, with lowering rates for the promise of bulk work and actually having that pan out. Penelope says, nice. A lot of mail mergers will let you personalize each email. Generally speaking, with the mail mergers, though, the personalization that they give you is the ability to put in an individual's name or to put in an individual's company or something like that, right? There's certain merge tags that you can use, which doesn't really personalize the message. So when I say personalize the message, I'm not saying the email goes out and says, hey, Bob, hey, Jim, hey, Cindy, hey, Kathy, whatever. I'm saying I'm writing a custom email that's personalized to Bob. Hey, Bob, what'd you think of the Red Sox game last week? Because I know that Bob's a Red Sox fan, right? So I'm talking about that little bit deeper level of personalization. Great and valid perspective. Feel the same, and thanks for the validation on sticking to my guns. Ultimately, you want to build a client base of clients that want to work with you and recognize your value. And I think that sometimes when you say no to some of those opportunities that are less than stellar opportunities, it opens the door for better opportunities to come in, right? If you fill your days full of working with clients that you don't really want to work with, who are forcing you to work for rates that you're not happy with, you're preventing yourself from being able to work for the clients who do want to pay you what you're worth. And so I think you got to be really strategic in when you're choosing your clients. Red says, how do you handle rates for the same script recorded in 2 languages? I would say that would be 2 different rates. I think there should be a version for the English, a version for the second language, the Spanish, the French, the German, the whatever it is. To me, that would be a second rate because it's a second usage. Technically it's a second project. Marlon says, Fridays. Thanks you for Free Advice Fridays. I'm happy to do these Free Advice Fridays. Absolutely. Always enjoy being able to hang out with you guys and answer questions. Again, a reminder that Tracy Lindley is going to be on the show next week. And then Natasha Marchevska is going to be on the show the week after that. And I'm already starting to think about who could possibly come on the show for December. Social Triber says, have you increased your rates during this recession? And if so, what do you say to your clients? At this point, I haven't. I have not because, look, a lot of my clients are struggling. That is the definition of recession, right? The definition of recession is that business has slowed. And so if business has slowed, that means that sales are down. That means that revenue is down. That generally means that profits are down. And so I just don't think that now is the right time to be coming out and trying to hit my clients with rate increases. Now, I have stuck to my rates. I've had some clients that have questioned about whether or not, they can get a lower rate or whatever, but I've tried to stick to my rates. But at this point, I have not yet raised my rates. And David and I talked about this earlier in the broadcast and whether or not we should be raising our rates with inflation and all of that sort of stuff. And one of the things that you have to understand from an economic standpoint, not specifically voiceover, but just from a general economic standpoint, with inflation, if inflation gets into wages, then it keeps the cycle going longer. Because if a company has to raise wages in order to keep up with inflation, by raising wages, that means that they're also probably going to have to raise the prices of their products and or services in order to raise their revenues, in order to offset the raise in the wages. And so then nothing actually gets cheaper. We don't actually fight inflation. We just carry on with inflation. And so that's why the Fed has been hitting so hard on interest rates and trying to bring inflation down as quickly as possible, because they're trying to get inflation under control before it trickles into wages and then creates a whole other secondary problem. And so right now I am just riding it out. I have not raised my rates. I am just riding it out, and we'll see. Now, does that mean that I won't? No, I'm not saying I won't. Just saying I haven't yet. Will says, I personalize my cold emails and use a merge tool. It's still tag based, but there's no limit to what you can put into those tags. And that's absolutely true. The more tags that you have, the greater the level of customization that you can put in. And there are ways to work around with that as well. But then I also think for me on the back end, the amount of time that I would spend doing some of that stuff versus the amount of time just sitting down and actually typing out an email. Because here's the other thing to remember. My marketing emails are 100 words. My introductory marketing emails are not long, lengthy emails. And so it's not like these things don't take me a lot of time to write. And so if I got to sit down and spend hours creating all of the tags and the customization that is necessary to go into using a merger tool versus actually just sitting down and writing 100-word emails, 2/3 of which is a template, I don't know. Everybody's got to identify their workflow, right? You got to identify a workflow that works for you. I have just always found that by doing the individualized emails and sending them out that way, I've just always got better results. That's the big thing for me, right? And I'm all about the results. I need to see the conversion rates. I need to see the bookings. And when I try to do things in a bulk way or a more automated way, I generally see my conversions go down. And maybe that's not the case for everyone, in which case, awesome. And I want to learn your ways. But there's certainly no shortage of tools out there and that allow you to do marketing in no shortage of different ways. And so absolutely something to be, something to look at. Nothing wrong with test driving a mail merger tool or something like that and seeing if it works for you. Guys, again, just a reminder, this webinar that's coming up on Tuesday, 10 Marketing Commandments for the VOpreneur. It's at marcscottcoaching.com, the website, marcscottcoaching.com. Sign up for that one. This is going to be a really great webinar. I'm really looking forward to diving into this. I'm really looking forward to talking about marketing from a more foundational level. Just some of the things, we say that there are rules to live by, right? Whether or not that's the 10 Commandments or something else for you. I also think that there are rules to market by. And so that's what this webinar is all about, is giving you some of those foundational rules that will help you to be more effective in your marketing. Tips for email marketing, tips for social media marketing, tips for marketing in general as well. MarcScottCoaching.com. It's a $47 webinar. That's the most affordable, accessible webinar that I have ever offered. So you can check that out at MarcScottCoaching.com. It goes live November 15th at 7 o'clock Eastern. And if you are unable to join live for any reason, don't worry. You will get access to a complete video recording after the fact as well. So you can still sign up. You will not miss anything. All right, guys, with that, it's time for me to run. I've got some things that I need to do today, but thank you for hanging out as always. Again, a reminder about Free Advice Friday next week. We're going live November 18th at 1 p.m. Eastern. Tracy Lindley is going to be on the show, and she is going to be answering your questions about LinkedIn. So make sure that you check that one out, that you sign up for that one. Subscribe for the YouTube channel. That way you can get notified when I go live. You will not have to miss anything. That is going to be a great episode with Tracy Lindley next week, 1 o'clock Eastern. And then the week after that, Black Friday. If you are not busy shopping on Black Friday, getting all of your Christmas gifts or whatever it is that you may be out doing on Black Friday, then join us for Free Advice Friday with Natasha Marchevska, one half of the V123 Pros. And she'll be answering your questions about Voice 123. So that's what's coming up on Free Advice Friday. As always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for hanging out. I'm grateful. I appreciate it. Check out the podcast, new episode at VOpreneur.com or wherever fine podcasts are given away for free. Whatever you decide to do this weekend, have fun, stay safe, and as always, go find some leads.